As reality presses in on me again, this isn't the video about my windlass I had hoped to post. This will be more about what I'm going through to make my videos. Creating content in YouTube is quite a process. It generally can't be done just by shooting a video and then uploading it to YouTube. It starts with what's known as pre-production, deciding what kind of story to tell, how to tell it, and what video content I'll need, and getting everything together that I'll need to shoot it. Ideally, the video is planned out shot by shot in a notebook called a storyboard with cameras, lenses, angles, and what audio to capture, etc. for each shot. But with the kinds of stories I tell, that can't be done ahead of time, because unless I'm recreating something that already happened, I can't know ahead of time how the story is going to play out. Like if tearing something apart to fix it, but I've never had it apart and don't yet know what's wrong with it. Or if the story I'm telling is something that's already on video that was captured unexpectedly. Then, once all of that's done, the production, the actual shooting can start. In my case, this is usually a mixture of gathering video I already have, shooting more to fill in the gaps, and shooting narration to provide explanation. Since I'm alone, this video is usually monologue like this, me talking into the camera, or B-roll stuff that I edit over the narration, or primary video feed, a video that tells its own story with audio captured in real time. A good YouTube story will have all three. They often take a lot of work to set up and shoot, but for a 10-minute video they can usually be shot in a couple of hours. The exception is shooting a project which may involve many hours of video to get every important detail, and just letting the camera run while I work. I shoot with my Nikon D7100 and a handful of lenses, 2 GoPro 7s, sometimes my iPhone and iPad cameras, my laptop webcam, and then once in a while a little toy Mavic rip-off drone that I'm not very good with yet. My audio is just the built-in microphones on the cameras. Lighting is just whatever natural light I have available. In short, I have no video equipment, not the critical lighting and audio stuff that really matters. Once the video is shot, the post-production, the real bulk of the work begins. First, I have to curate the video I've shot. I have to identify what's in each shot and how I plan to use it. This can be challenging for the longer takes when I wasn't totally focused on what I was capturing. I usually wind up with at least dozens of video files ranging in length from a few seconds to sometimes an hour or more for the GoPros. And it almost all gets used. For a project video, I usually have 5 to 10 hours of video that has to be chopped into the critical bits for the 10-minute run-through that you see on YouTube. So editing is 90% of the work, including planning, shooting, and everything. It's grueling, even with a good editor. I own an old copy of Adobe Master Collection, so I use Premiere Pro. It's old and clunky, not like the new versions, but it still works. It has everything I could ask for and is as reliable as my computer. If I edit, it will give me a file. I've been editing on an old broken Toshiba Radius. I think it runs a Celeron and has barely enough memory to boot. More on that later. Editing takes me about 2 hours per minute of video, plus several more hours of setup, credits, and audio, and other problem solving. I start my editing by putting all my video files in chronological order. If I don't have one, I set up some kind of storyboard as a plan, usually just a rough line-by-line story in text, and then I add as many files as will fit in memory into Premiere Pro. Once in a while, I shoot with multiple cameras at the same time. Now I overlay them, each in its own channel, and then get them so the audio is synchronized. Then when I edit, I can cut from one camera to the next and back and still choose the best audio from either one. A good example of this was the video tour of the boatyard in the COVID-19 isolation post. I had a GoPro on my belt and I had one on the selfie stick, shooting the same narration from different perspectives. Every file I load into Premiere Pro has to be preview rendered. Preview rendering is when Premiere processes the file and creates a video preview, of how it will look and play when I export it to a file. These are critical to being able to edit them. I have to see what I'm doing to the video. And rendering takes a long time on this old slow laptop. A render can run overnight, 8 to 12 hours for 15 minutes of video. Each frame gets calculated from the input video vectors, and then the frame pixels are generated one by one, and the frames saved to the preview file for tens of thousands of frames. Since it's much easier to set up the audio levels before I edit anything, I do that when I import the video file. I might also have to frame the video if it was shot in a different format so it fits your screen. If I don't do this first, I have to do it manually for each tiny clip after it's edited. Then I go at them with the scissors, cutting out everything that's a waste of time. I consider how much of the story this video part will tell and set a time goal, and keep cutting until I have it near the amount of runtime. Sometimes I have to shuffle the cuts around a bit if it tells the story better, because when I'm shooting, I ramble. That's why I'm reading this and not shooting it freeform. Once I've cut the heck out of my art and have it down to the runtime goal, if it's freed up enough memory, I'll add in more files and do it again. Hopefully, when I'm finished, I have all my video into Premiere Pro and cut down to the runtime I need. I usually do, but I have had occasions when it just wouldn't fit into memory, and I had to break it up into several projects, finish each project, and then splice the separate projects together into one video file. Cutting the video down requires most of the editing time, and I constantly want to do more while I'm chopping it up. I want to add the transitions and cuts and captions and B-roll, but I have to resist this temptation because, as fun as it would be, it would all be wasted editing time. See, what I'm editing isn't finished, and I'll probably wind up cutting it more or doing something else that will ruin all that stuff. So I just don't do it until later. Just cutting and pasting usually doesn't require that the preview be rendered again, but transitions, cuts, and captions do. So I try to get all the mileage I can out of the render before I mess it up and have to run it again. But now, once it's all cut and pasted together, I can watch the story run through. It looks nasty, but I can see if it tells the story. I change things and maybe even shoot more video if I need to make sure I have something that at least makes sense to me all the way through. And the audio should be close to finished, all the correct sound and at all the correct levels. I fix anything that needs fixing before I go on. If I like it, then I can start on the video storytelling, adding B-roll so you're not just watching me talk. This might be stuff I shot for B-roll, or it might be stuff I cut where I was talking, but now with the audio cut off. It even might be stuff I cut for other stories that fits the narrative, sort of my own stock footage. This is also the time I use cutting those multiple camera segments into different angles so they tell the story better. When I'm finished, I have a video story, but it's still clunky. The video jumps a lot and the audio might pop and jump from clip to clip. So next I add the transitions. I've been using just very simple transitions so far, but they help a lot to make the video flow instead of jumping about like a song with a badly used auto-tune. It might drive you crazy to see me go fuzzy between words, but I think it looks better than being electrocuted every 2 seconds. If I'm going to add music, now is when I do that, because sometimes the video feels like it needs something and just a little background music helps. Once this is all finished, the whole project needs to be rendered again so it will play the way it will look on the output file. When I'm finished, the content part of the video is done. I can watch it all the way through and look for any problems. I can see it in almost as good a quality of video and audio as you will see it on YouTube. Lastly, I add the channel intro sequence and credits. If you haven't noticed, I try to make the credits interesting where I can. So, once all this is done and rendered yet again, the editing is finished. I just have to turn it into a file now. Exporting it into a file is yet another rendering step, and usually takes at least overnight, sometimes several days, especially if I have had memory problems. Even at this point, I might have memory problems and have to go in and break the project up into parts and export them and then use a third project to splice them back together without running out of memory. Usually, I can just get it to export directly after a couple of tries. But this is why I struggled so much with those early videos. Okay, now my file is on my hard drive ready to upload. Remember, I'm in a swamp in the middle of nowhere on the western edge of Panama. I have my phone data plan. I have a Wi-Fi hub in the boatyard, but its connection is tenuous and it's not much faster than the phone. It all runs at about 3G speeds, but both drop out on regular occasions. So uploading can happen overnight or can take a couple of days. If it fails, I usually have to start the upload over, though YouTube seems to be improving this. So that's the routine I've settled into to make my videos. You can imagine just how much I've come to rely on my laptop. Now, 2 weeks ago, just after finishing my last video, this happened. That's why there's no windlass video today. The streaks along the right side have been with me for some time. You can see the hinge broke, and with it the connections along the bottom of the screen. So I just used the rest of the screen, and it's worked okay up until now. 2 weeks ago something popped, and it looks like the red drive is gone. And if I make donuts with the mouse, you can also see that there's a watchdog timer firing in there on something when it locks up and then comes back about every 2 seconds. Anyway, I can't see what I'm doing very well in the video editor. So being in the middle of a swamp in western Panama, a really long ways from really anything, getting things here is, well, to avoid offensive language, challenging. Panama City is a large, prosperous place with all the usual shopping centers and malls and the like, but even there, it's not like the States. Getting a high-end laptop would be rough, even if I could get there, which I can't. So after some prayer, I finally felt that making these videos is good therapy, and I swallowed hard and ordered the best one I could find on Amazon. At close to $3,000, I can't afford an i9, but I found a newer i7 6-core and got all the memory it can fit, and had it shipped to the most reliable of the Bocas couriers, along with a Pelican case and lots of desiccants to keep it alive, at least until something hits it while I'm working. It should make the editing process go a lot smoother. Renders should be much faster and with no memory problems. But first I need to get it here. And then I need to figure out how to get my Adobe CS3 here to install. I don't think downloading it is really going to work. So that's my story today. The next few videos will probably be pretty raw, but I'll keep on posting until I get it sorted. I hope my stuff is still worth your time. In the meantime, wish me luck, and fair winds from SV Escape TARDIS.